No Apache can hit that target and survive. The commander spoke with certainty, pointing to maps filled with air defenses and a fortress buried deep in the mountains. Everyone in the room believed the mission was suicide. Everyone except Captain Anna Falcon Reyes. She was young but battle-tested, with instincts sharpened by thousands of combat hours. While others saw impossibility, Anna saw a path no one dared to imagine. Days later, she guided her Apache into a canyon barely wide enough for its blades, 12 feet of margin on either side, flying through a tunnel of stone and fire. Then in seconds, 3 Hellfire missiles streaked toward their marks, eliminating 3 enemy generals at once. The impossible was done, and this is the story of how Anna rewrote the rules of war. The mission briefing unfolded under the cold glow of satellite images projected on the wall. Jagged mountains, radar shadows, and red circles marking air defense batteries painted a picture no pilot wanted to see. At the front of the room, Commander Nathan Steele stood with arms folded, his voice carrying the weight of final judgment. No Apache can hit that target and survive. His tone was steady, absolute, the kind of verdict no one dared to challenge. Around the table, heads nodded in grim agreement. The compound hidden in the mountains was simply beyond reach. But in the back row sat Captain Ana Reyes, known by her call sign Falcon. She didn't fidget, didn't argue, didn't break eye contact with the glowing map. Her nickname hadn't come from luck. It came from a reputation. In storms that grounded fleets, Falcon flew. When missions demanded creativity under fire, she found the path no one else could see. To Steele and the others, this mission was suicide. To her, it was a problem waiting for a solution. What made the contrast sharper was who she was. Young, female, and one of the few Apache pilots in the region, Anna had grown used to skepticism shadowing her career. Yet doubt never shook her. It sharpened her resolve. She wasn't reckless. She was relentless. And here's where I want to bring you in, the viewer. We all know someone like Falcon, someone overlooked, underestimated, or doubted simply because they didn't fit the mold. And yet when the pressure came, they delivered in ways no one else could. Do you know a hidden hero in your own life? Maybe it's a coworker, a neighbor, a family member who quietly carries strength others fail to see. Share their story in the comments. You never know who might be inspired by it. This is where Anna's journey begins, with a room full of doubt and a pilot who refused to accept it. To understand why Commander Steele and the others dismissed the idea of an Apache strike, you need to know what makes the AH-64 both powerful and limited. On paper, the Apache helicopter is a monster of engineering. It carries Hellfire missiles capable of turning concrete bunkers into rubble, Hydra rockets that can blanket enemy positions, and a 30mm chain gun that spits fire with devastating precision. It is armored, agile for its size, and packed with advanced sensors. But even the most lethal machine has its breaking point. And in the high mountains of Afghanistan and regions like Tora Bora, the Apache's strengths quickly turn into vulnerabilities. The thin air at altitude robs the rotors of lift, forcing the helicopter to work harder just to stay airborne. The narrow valleys limit maneuvering space, meaning a sudden gust of wind, or one miscalculation, could slam the aircraft into rock. Worse still, those same valleys funnel the Apache into predictable paths, where enemy gunners with shoulder-fired missiles wait like wolves at a choke point. That is why Steele's verdict wasn't arrogance. It was realism. The Apache was never designed to be a mountain phantom. It was built for close air support in rolling deserts, for open terrain where its mobility and firepower could dominate. Flying one into a canyon riddled with anti-aircraft systems wasn't just dangerous, it was, as Steele insisted, suicidal. But history is full of moments when machines were asked to do more than they were designed for. During operations in Afghanistan and Iraq, Apaches were pushed to their limits time and again. Pilots flew at night, skimming just meters above villages, chasing insurgents through alleys where one mistake meant disaster. In 2003, during the opening stages of Operation Iraqi Freedom, an Apache battalion launched a deep strike on Republican Guard positions. They encountered withering fire from machine guns, RPGs, and even small arms, proof that even the most advanced helicopter could be humbled by grit and terrain. Many aircraft returned riddled with holes. Some didn't return at all. And yet, despite the risks, Apaches kept flying. Why? Because in modern warfare, soldiers on the ground often survive only because of the rotor blades overhead. Pilots knew that if they didn't take the risk, someone else would pay the price in blood. For Captain Anna Falcon Reyes, this reality was personal. She had flown those missions. She had seen tracer fire reaching for her cockpit, felt the lurch of her Apache straining in thin mountain air. She knew what the skeptics in the briefing room were really saying. This is too much for you. And let's be honest, there was another layer to their doubt. Anna was not just young. She was also a woman in a world where female Apache pilots were a rarity. Though the U.S. military had long opened combat aviation to women, cultural bias lingered like smoke after battle. Some commanders looked at her not as Falcon the veteran pilot, but as Anna the exception, Anna the outlier. And when you're one of the few, every success is scrutinized, every mistake magnified. But Anna thrived in that pressure. Where others saw barriers, she saw a proving ground. Her call sign, Falcon, wasn't just a nickname. It was a reminder that she had earned her place by flying higher, faster, and braver than those who doubted her. In truth, the very limitations of the Apache, combined with the doubts cast on Anna herself, were about to collide into a mission that would test not only metal and machine, but also the resilience of one pilot's will to prove that impossible was just another word for untried. The maps were unforgiving. Two corridors led into the valley, both narrow and predictable, both covered by air defense systems that could swat an Apache from the sky like an insect. Every intelligence officer, every SEAL, every commander who studied those maps came to the same conclusion. There was no way in. But Anna wasn't like everyone else. For 3 weeks, she pored over the terrain data in her off hours. She ran satellite images through modeling software, zooming into every contour, every ridgeline, every shadow cast by the mountains. That was when she saw it, a third path, a crack in the fortress that no one else had noticed. On the northwestern edge of the valley, a canyon snaked through the rock, so narrow it looked more like a scar than a flight route. To most, it was invisible. To Anna, it was a lifeline. The canyon was brutal. Walls rising 800 feet on both sides, sharp turns that would force a helicopter to roll and bank at angles that terrified even seasoned pilots. At its tightest points, there would be 12 feet of margin on either side of the Apache's rotors. A single gust of wind, a single slip of the hand, and metal would meet stone in an instant of fire and wreckage. Still, she believed it could be done. But belief alone isn't enough. A pilot may hold the stick, but survival rests on the bond between pilot and co-pilot gunner. For Anna, that bond came in the form of Chief Warrant Officer Diego Hawk Ramirez. Hawk was older, steady where Anna was fierce. He had the eyes of a hawk, literally. His uncanny ability to spot targets and track movement had saved countless missions. With over 1,800 combat hours, he was respected in Army aviation circles as the man you wanted in the front seat when the world turned lethal. If Anna was the fire that burned against impossible odds, Hawk was the anchor that kept that fire controlled. When Anna showed him the canyon route, he didn't laugh, didn't scoff, didn't dismiss her as reckless. He studied the maps, ran his finger along the jagged lines, and then simply said, "If you can get us through, I can put missiles on target." That was all she needed. And here's the truth. In combat, trust is currency. Technology matters, training matters, but when chaos erupts and death comes from every direction, the only thing holding a crew together is faith in each other. A pilot must know that her gunner will acquire targets faster than the enemy can react. A gunner must know the pilot will keep the aircraft alive long enough to take the shot. Without that trust, even the best machines and weapons are useless. History is filled with examples. In Afghanistan, Apache crews often flew missions where visibility was nearly zero. Dust storms, moonless nights, mountain shadows. Survival depended not on who had the best tech, but on who trusted their partner to see what they could not. And sometimes that trust meant life over death. For Anna and Hawk, this mission was about more than coordinates and kill zones. It was about choosing to believe in each other when everyone else said the mission couldn't be done. She would thread the Apache through a tunnel of stone, and Hawk would be ready with 3 Hellfire missiles to strike the generals the moment they came into view. It wasn't arrogance, it was partnership. It was the unspoken language of combat crews. I will take us in. You will finish it. Together, we will come out. That northwestern canyon, invisible to intelligence analysts and dismissed by seasoned commanders, was about to become the stage where trust and courage would fuse into something no enemy could anticipate. And when Anna looked at Hawk and saw only calm readiness in his eyes, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. If there was even the smallest chance of survival, they would find it together. The morning of the mission broke cold and silent. The air over the base carried the kind of stillness that soldiers recognize, the quiet before chaos. For Captain Anna Falcon Reyes, the day began not with bravado, but with ritual. Every pilot has their own pre-flight rhythm, but Anna's was almost obsessive. She knew that the Apache AH-64E was a beast of war, but also a fragile machine when pushed beyond its limits. And today she intended to push it further than anyone ever had. She ran her hands along the fuselage, checking each panel as though she were touching the surface of a living creature. Hydraulics, rotors, avionics, every detail mattered. If even a single system failed inside that canyon, the mission would end in seconds. She crouched to inspect the Hellfire missiles mounted on the stub wings, tracing the lines that connected them to the targeting system. 3 missiles, 3 generals, no room for error. Her co-pilot, Chief Warrant Officer Diego Hawk Ramirez, mirrored her intensity. While Anna checked the helicopter itself, Hawk confirmed weapon calibration, sensor alignment, and electronic countermeasure readiness. He tested the targeting display again and again until his confidence was absolute. They didn't speak much during those hours of preparation. Words weren't needed. Each knew what the other was thinking. This mission wasn't about glory. It was about precision, discipline, and trust. When the final checks were complete, Anna climbed into the cockpit. The seat felt familiar, but the weight pressing down on her chest was new. She adjusted her helmet, ran through the avionics startup sequence, and listened to the turbine engines roar to life. The sound was deafening, yet strangely calming. For years, this had been the music of her life, the drumbeat of purpose. But beneath the routine, she couldn't escape the reality of the canyon. 12 feet. That was all the space she would have on either side of her rotor blades when they entered the narrowest stretch. She had replayed it in simulations countless times. The sharp banks, the hairpin turns, the constant risk of rotor wash dragging her into the canyon walls. Each practice run reminded her that the margin for survival was not measured in miles or meters. It was measured in inches. And that is where the suspense truly lived. The canyon was not just stone, it was a predator waiting to consume the careless. As the crew received their final briefing, Commander Steele reminded them of the stakes. The 3 generals would only be at the compound for a narrow window. Once dispersed, the chance would be lost for years. Steele's eyes lingered on Anna for a moment longer than on anyone else. He didn't repeat his earlier skepticism, but the silence in his gaze carried the same unspoken message. You're betting your life against stone and steel. Don't let it crush you. Anna met his gaze without flinching. She had already made peace with the risk. To her, courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was the refusal to let fear dictate the mission. The engines thundered louder, rotors cutting through the morning air as the Apache lifted gently from the tarmac. Hawk's voice came through the intercom, steady and sure. Falcon, systems green, weapons hot, whenever you're ready. She gave a short nod, gripping the controls. The path ahead wasn't just about flying, it was about threading the needle through nature's deadliest gauntlet. Now pause for a second, and let me ask you, the viewer, could you stay calm in that canyon? Could you hold steady knowing you had only 12 feet of forgiveness on either side, with death waiting in the stone and fire? Because that's the razor-thin line Anna was about to walk. The mission clock was ticking. The 3 generals were already gathering inside the compound. Every minute of hesitation closed the window further. Anna inhaled once, deeply, then pushed the throttle forward. The Apache surged into the sky, leaving the safety of the base behind. From this moment onward, there was no turning back. The impossible canyon awaited. The Apache dipped lower as the jagged teeth of the canyon walls rose up around them. From above, it looked like a scar carved into the earth, a narrow slit of stone winding deeper into the mountains. For Captain Anna Falcon Reyes, it was less a passage and more a crucible. She eased the cyclic stick forward, adjusting the collective with subtle pressure, guiding nearly 8 tons of machine into a space that seemed never meant for helicopters. The first turn came almost immediately, a sharp left bend that narrowed into an S-turn, like a serpent daring her to follow. At this altitude, the Apache's rotors clawed at thin air, struggling for lift. Every input mattered. Too high, and the blades would strike the walls. Too low, and the helicopter would scrape the canyon floor. Anna rolled the aircraft at 45 degrees, holding her breath as the tail swung around. The rotors missed the rock by feet, no, by inches. Dust and fragments of stone scattered in the rotor wash, showering the windshield in grit. Her hands never trembled. Her eyes locked on the next bend, already anticipating the counter-movement. Speed steady at 120 knots, Hawk's voice reported from the front seat. His tone was calm, but Anna knew the stress pressed on him too. He monitored the sensors, checked for heat signatures, and kept the weapon system primed. His job was to watch the outside world while she fought the canyon itself. The next turn came faster, a right-hand bend tighter than the last. Anna feathered the controls, dancing the aircraft in micro-adjustments. Every correction was the product of thousands of hours of flight muscle memory. A good pilot reacts to what they see. An exceptional pilot anticipates what they don't yet see. Anna wasn't waiting for the canyon to challenge her. She was already ahead of it, reading its intent like an open book. The Apache roared through, skimming so close that the rotor blades seemed to slice the air against the canyon walls. Hawk muttered under his breath, "This is insane flying." Anna smirked, not looking away from the HUD. "No, Hawk, this is Tuesday morning flying." It wasn't arrogance. It was focus. The sharp edge honed by years of being underestimated, doubted, tested. To her, this wasn't about showing off. It was about survival, about proving that the margin between life and death could be measured in skill. Halfway through, the canyon constricted again. The walls closed to a point where the margin shrank to the infamous 12 feet on either side. Anna tightened her grip, lowering the collective slightly to stabilize. Turbulence whipped at the helicopter as rotor wash bounced back from stone to steel, threatening to flip the aircraft. She countered with precise pedal inputs, her feet moving as fluidly as her hands. Hawk scanned his screen, heart thundering though his voice never betrayed it. No radar locks, no heat signatures yet. We're still ghosts. That was the other advantage of this path. The very walls trying to crush them also shielded them from enemy sensors. To surface radars, the Apache had vanished, swallowed whole by stone. But invisibility came at a cost. If anything happened in here, no one would ever know until the wreckage was found. Anna pressed on. Another S-turn. Tighter than before. She banked hard, the Apache tilting steep enough to rattle their harnesses. The canyon floor rushed up dangerously close before she corrected, climbing back into the center of the gap. Hawk let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "This is why they call you Falcon," he said quietly. Anna didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her concentration was absolute. And here lies the truth of combat aviation. The difference between good and exceptional isn't bravery or training alone. It's the ability to remain calm when logic says panic. A good pilot flies the helicopter. An exceptional pilot becomes the helicopter, feeling every vibration as if it were her own pulse. In those moments, Anna wasn't just inside the Apache. She was part of it, fused into metal and rotor, guiding it like an extension of her body. Minutes felt like hours as they threaded the gauntlet. Finally, the canyon opened slightly, revealing the last stretch before the concealed exit. Hawk's targeting system began to flicker with faint signatures. "We're close. 30 seconds to target acquisition." Anna didn't look at the screen. She kept her eyes on the narrowing exit, her mind 3 steps ahead. One last turn, one last chance to prove that this canyon couldn't break her. She pulled the Apache into the bank, scraping the edge of impossibility, then straightened it with surgical precision. And then, like a predator emerging from shadows, the Apache burst from the canyon's jaws, silent, unseen, and perfectly positioned. "Targets in sight," Hawk confirmed. Anna exhaled for the first time in 15 minutes. The impossible canyon had been conquered. Now the real battle was about to begin. The canyon spat them out like an arrow loosed from a bow. One moment, the Apache was swallowed in shadow, its rotor wash trapped in the stone throat of the mountain. The next, it burst into open sky, hovering above a valley that had been declared untouchable. Below lay the target, a fortified compound carved into the rock, its buildings crouched like predators awaiting prey. Armed fighters patrolled the perimeter, their weapons slung casually, unaware that death had just slipped in through the back door of the mountains. From his seat in the front, Chief Warrant Officer Diego Hawk Ramirez came alive. His targeting screen lit up, scanning heat signatures, marking defensive positions, tracing outlines of buildings. His voice was calm but charged, the way a surgeon might sound before the first incision. 3 primaries confirmed, Hawk said. Main hall, comms hub, and bunker. All 3 generals are present. Anna's hands tightened on the controls, keeping the Apache steady at the canyon's mouth. They had 30 seconds, maybe less, before the enemy realized what was happening. "Do it," she said. Hawk's fingers danced across the console, his eyes never leaving the green outlines glowing on the heads-up display. Target locks pulsed one after another, his experience evident in the speed of his acquisition. Years of combat had honed him into a machine of precision. This was his moment as much as Anna's. Target 1 locked, Target 2 locked, Target 3 locked, missiles armed. Anna exhaled once. Send them. The Apache shuddered as the first Hellfire missile left its rail, the roar vibrating through their bones. Hawk launched the second, then the third, 3 deadly streaks of fire cutting through the morning air. Each missile curved slightly, adjusting course mid-flight, their seekers hungry for the coordinates Hawk had given them. 8 seconds. That was all it would take. From the cockpit, they could see the compound spring to life in panic. Fighters scrambled, pointing skyward, but too late. The first Hellfire slammed into the main hall, a thunderclap of flame and stone as the roof collapsed inward. Inside, General Khalid al-Rashid, the man responsible for hundreds of coalition deaths, vanished in a storm of fire. The second missile struck the communications hub, detonating not only the structure, but the ammunition stockpiles hidden within. The explosion was so fierce it sent a fireball clawing into the sky, shredding antennas, cutting every line of command General Omar Hassan had built. The third missile dove straight into the reinforced bunker, a structure meant to withstand artillery. But Hellfires were designed for just such arrogance. The shaped charge tore through concrete, ignited fuel, and ended the life of General Yasir Mimoudeh, the financier who had kept terror alive across 3 countries. 3 missiles, 3 explosions. 3 lives that had orchestrated chaos now erased in less than 10 seconds. Hawk's voice broke the silence, flat but certain. All primaries eliminated. Anna didn't cheer. She didn't smile. Her grip on the controls tightened, her mind already shifting to escape. She knew the compound would now explode into chaos, anti-aircraft fires spitting blindly toward the sky. Their window of invisibility was over. Yet for a moment she allowed herself the smallest thought. The impossible had just been done, and here is where the commentary strikes home. In life, whether in combat or far from the battlefield, there are moments when the world hands you only one chance. One window, one heartbeat, one decision where hesitation means failure and precision means victory. For Anna and Hawk, this was that moment. There would be no second run, no margin for error, no opportunity to circle back if one general had escaped. It was all or nothing. That truth mirrors the battles we all face, doesn't it? Maybe not with missiles and fortified compounds, but with choices that shape careers, relationships, or even survival. You prepare, you study, you sweat through simulations and practice runs. But eventually the decision arrives, and in that instant, you discover whether you are simply good or whether you are exceptional. Anna and Hawk had seized their moment with flawless timing. The missiles had left the rails almost simultaneously, their impacts synchronized in destruction. That was not luck. It was the product of trust, discipline, and nerves honed by fire. The compound below was in ruins. Fires spread where command posts had stood minutes earlier. Shouts and panic echoed faintly through the cockpit's comms feed, a chorus of disbelief from men who thought themselves untouchable. But Anna knew better than to linger. Targets neutralized, she confirmed. Time to go. The Apache banked sharply, pulling away from the valley as smoke plumes clawed skyward. Behind them, the fortress that no one believed could be touched was collapsing into flame and rubble. 3 missiles, 3 generals, 1 shot, 1 chance. And against all odds, Falcon had made it count. Smoke and fire consumed the valley below, but Captain Anna, Falcon Reyes, had no time to admire the strike. The Hellfires had done their work, eliminating all 3 generals, yet the compound's defenders were far from finished. Gunfire stitched the sky, RPG trails arced upward, and somewhere in the chaos, shoulder-fired missiles searched for their mark. Hawk's voice was sharp in her headset. "We need to get back into the canyon, now!" It was the obvious choice. The canyon that had hidden their approach could also hide their escape. Every commander expected them to vanish back into its stone throat, a ghost disappearing the way it had come. But Anna knew better. The enemy would be waiting, already rushing to set up ambushes at the narrow exit. Her eyes darted over the ridgelines surrounding the valley. There was another way out, one no pilot would dare consider. "We're not going back," she said. Hawk froze. "What?" "We're going up." The words hung heavy in the cockpit. To climb meant exposure, silhouetted against the morning sky, vulnerable to every gunner and missile battery in range. To most pilots, it was suicide. But Anna understood the deeper truth. The enemy had anticipated logic. They had fortified the canyon exits, positioned men to trap her in stone. They had not prepared for madness. With a sharp pull on the cyclic, she banked the Apache hard, nose climbing toward the ridgeline. The rotors strained against thin mountain air, alarms blinking as performance limits were tested. Below, Hawk's targeting screens lit up with threats. "Falcon, we're painted. Multiple locks." "Hold on," Anna muttered. Tracer rounds clawed at the sky, streaks of fire passing dangerously close. One missile whooshed past the tail, detonating harmlessly in the cliffs. Another screamed upward, forcing Anna to jink the Apache in a desperate swerve. The helicopter bucked violently, but her hands were steady. Every maneuver was calculated chaos, violent enough to throw off enemy aim, controlled enough to keep them alive. Hawk gritted his teeth as the G-forces pressed into him. "They're everywhere. This is insane." Anna's voice was calm, almost detached. "That's why it'll work." And it did. For 30 unbearable seconds, the Apache was fully exposed. But by the time enemy gunners realized she had chosen the sky instead of the canyon, it was too late. Their weapons were aimed at shadows in the valley floor, not the predator streaking above them. The few missiles that managed to launch never had time to correct course. Then, suddenly, they were clear. The ridgeline fell away beneath them, and the Apache burst into open air. The entire mountain range sprawled below, like a conquered battlefield. "Control, this is Falcon," Anna said into her comms, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Mission accomplished. All 3 primaries eliminated. Aircraft intact, returning to base." There was a stunned silence on the other end. Then Commander Nathan Steele's voice came through, rough and disbelieving. "Confirm that, Falcon." "Did you say all 3? "Confirmed," Anna replied. "Direct hits, 3 kills." Another pause. When Steele spoke again, the steel in his tone cracked, replaced by awe. "I don't believe it. You did it." Back in the command center, officers exchanged stunned looks. For weeks, they had deemed the target unreachable. Steele himself had declared it suicide, and yet here she was, calm, alive, and reporting success. The Apache cut across the mountains, its shadow trailing over jagged peaks. Inside the cockpit, Hawk finally allowed himself to breathe. "You know," he said, voice ragged, "you're out of your mind." Anna allowed the faintest smile. "Sometimes that's what it takes." And here lies the heart of the commentary. In combat, survival doesn't always come from following the plan. Plans are made with logic, with probabilities, with predictable outcomes. But life, whether on the battlefield or beyond, rarely unfolds according to plan. Sometimes survival demands breaking your own rules, daring the move no one expects, including yourself. Anna's climb over the ridgeline had been madness to anyone else. To her, it was clarity, the realization that the only way to live was to defy the very strategy she had prepared. In that choice, she transformed desperation into victory. As the base came into view, the enormity of what she had done began to sink in. She hadn't just survived. She had disproved every certainty, shattered every doubt, and written a new chapter in the doctrine of war. For Commander Steele, listening from afar, it was a humbling reminder. Sometimes the strongest leaders are forced to admit they were wrong, and sometimes the impossible is conquered not by logic, but by the courage to throw logic aside. When the Apache finally touched down at base, the rotors slowing to silence, the flight line was already crowded. Word of the impossible strike had spread faster than the helicopter itself. Mechanics, intelligence officers, even hardened SEALs who had dismissed the mission gathered to witness the crew that had returned from what everyone assumed was certain death. Commander Nathan Steele stood at the front, his jaw tight, eyes locked on Anna. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then he saluted, crisp and deliberate. "Captain Reyes," he said, his voice carrying both respect and disbelief, "you just did what the book said couldn't be done." It wasn't just Steele's respect she had earned. Within weeks, the Army Aviation Command released an internal report detailing the mission. The conclusion was blunt. Falcon's tactics had rewritten the operational limits of the Apache. Her daring approach through the canyon, her use of terrain masking, and her unorthodox escape set the foundation for what soon became known as the Falcon flying doctrine. Anna was reassigned as an instructor, tasked with teaching other pilots what she had discovered in Blood and Fire. She didn't see it as glory, she saw it as duty. To her, every new pilot who learned her methods represented a life saved, a mission won, a possibility unlocked. But she was not the only one recognized. Chief Warrant Officer Diego "Hawk" Ramirez was formally commended for executing one of the most precise missile strikes in modern Apache history. 3 targets, 3 missiles, near simultaneous impact. His performance was immortalized in training footage shown to new gunners worldwide. Hawk, ever modest, shrugged off the attention, saying only, "Falcon flew us there. I just pressed the buttons." Yet those who understood knew better. It had taken both pilot and gunner, bound by trust, to make history. And here is the greater truth. Pioneers rarely fit inside the manuals they inherit. Tactical doctrines are built on the limits of what is known. But pioneers like Anna and Hawk push past those limits, forcing the manuals to be rewritten. They are the reason the impossible of yesterday becomes the standard of tomorrow. For Anna Reyes, the recognition wasn't about medals or headlines. It was about proving that courage plus innovation equals survival. For Hawk Ramirez, it was about showing that precision under fire can change the course of battle. Together, they had turned doubt into doctrine. And in doing so, they reminded the world that the first to break the rules are often the ones who end up writing them anew. In the end, the mission was never just about eliminating 3 generals. It was about rewriting what people thought was possible. Captain Anna Falcon Reyes proved a timeless truth. Impossible is often just not yet attempted. What others dismissed as suicide, she transformed into strategy. What was seen as madness, she turned into survival. Falcon became more than a pilot. She became a symbol of what creativity, resilience, and courage can achieve when fused together under pressure. Hawk Ramirez stood beside her, proving that trust and precision are the lifeblood of victory. Together, they showed that doctrine isn't written in ink. It's carved by those willing to fly into the unknown. And now I want to turn to you, the viewer. Have you ever faced a moment where everyone doubted you, yet you pushed through and proved them wrong? Share your story in the comments. Your voice matters here because this channel isn't just about telling stories. It's about building a community of people who know what it means to rise when the world says you can't. Thank you for spending your time with us. If this story touched you, please like the video, subscribe for more, and share it with someone who could use a reminder that impossible is never the final word. Together, we're not just telling stories, we're building a community of resilience and hope.